Good morning. Today is May 22nd, the year 2020, a Friday. And after a morning filled with technical difficulties, I hope this comes off well. We will be continuing our study in Genesis, starting with Genesis chapter 34, which I guarantee is one that you never studied in Vacation Bible School. You may never have even read it before. Now Dinah, the daughter of Leah, had born to Jacob, went out to visit the women of the land. When Shechem, son of Hamor the Hivite, the ruler of the area, saw her, he took her and violated her. His heart was drawn to Dinah, daughter of Jacob. He loved the girl and spoke tenderly to her. And Shechem saw his father Hamor, "Get me this girl for my wife." Certainly, what we're going to see is that the reaction of her family is not positive. I suspect rape has occurred. There is some doubt, I suppose, in the narrative, but certainly her brothers take it as rape. When Jacob heard that his daughter Dinah had been defiled, his sons went into the fields with his livestock, so he kept quiet about it until they came home. Shechem's father Hamor went out to fault Jacob. Jacob's sons had come in from the fields as soon as they heard what had happened. They were filled with grief and fury because Shechem had done a disgraceful thing in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter, a thing that should not be done. Now, see, by lying with Jacob's daughter suggests that they just had sex and they weren't married. But Hamor said to them, "My son Shechem has his heart set on your daughter. Please give her to him as his wife. Marry with us. Give us your daughters and take our daughters for yourselves. You can settle among us. This land is open to you. Live in it, trade in it, acquire property in it." Shechem said to Dinah's father and her brothers, "Let me find favor in your eyes, and I will give you whatever you ask. Make the price for the bride and the gift I will bring as great as you like, and I'll pay whatever you ask me. Only give me the girl as my wife." Because their sister Dinah had been defiled, Jacob's sons replied deceitfully as they spoke to Shechem and his father Hamor. They said to them, "We can't do such a thing. We can't give our sister to a man who is not circumcised. That would be a disgrace to us. We will give our consent to you on one condition only, that you become like us by circumcising all your males. Then we will give you our daughters and take your daughters for ourselves. We'll settle among you and become one people with you. But if you will not agree to be circumcised, we'll take our sister and go." Their proposal seemed good to Hamor and his son Shechem. The young man, who was the most honored of all his father's household, lost no time in doing what they had said because he was delighted with Jacob's daughter. So Hamor and his son Shechem went to the gate of the city to speak to their fellow townsmen. "These men are friendly towards us," they said. "Let them live in our land and trade in it. The land has plenty of room for them. We can marry their daughters and they can marry ours. But the men will consent to live with us only as one people, only on the condition that our males be circumcised as they themselves are. We want their livestock, their property, and all their other animals become ours. So let us give our consent to them. They will settle among us." All the men who went out of the city gate agreed with Hamor and his son Shechem, and every male in the city was circumcised. 3 days later, while all of them were still in pain, two of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, took their swords and attacked the unsuspecting city, killing every male. They put Hamor and his son Shechem to the sword and took Dinah from Shechem's house and left. The sons of Jacob came upon the dead bodies and looted the cities where their sister had been defiled. They seized the flock and herds and donkeys and everything else of theirs in the city and out in the fields. They carried off all their wealth and all the women and children, taking as plunder everything in the houses. Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have brought trouble on me by making me a stench to to the Canaanites and Perizzites, the people living in this land, "We are few in number, and if they join forces against me and attack me, I and my household will be destroyed." But they replied, Should he have treated our sister like a prostitute? Wow. Potential rape, uh, a devious plan to get all of the men in the city to circumcise themselves, a sneak attack when they know they are vulnerable, probably not by just the two sons, but by their men, and the looting and destruction of the city. And this, by the way, is Simeon and Levi. Levi as in Levites, as in the tribe of priests. Yeah, I don't think anybody covered this in Vacation Bible School. This is a pretty heavy passage. God said to Jacob, "Go up to Bethel and settle there. Build an altar there to God, who appeared to you when you were fleeing from your brother Esau." So Jacob said to his household and to all who were with him, "Get rid of the foreign gods you have with you, purify yourselves, and change your clothes. Then come, let us go up to Bethel, where I will build an altar to God, who answered me in the day of my distress, and who has been with me wherever I have gone." They gave Jacob all the foreign gods they had and the rings in their ears, and Jacob buried them out under the oak of the Shechem. They set out, and the terror of God fell upon the towns all around them, so that no one pursued them. Jacob and all the people with him came to Luz, that is Bethel, in the land of Canaan. There he built an altar, and he called it the place El Bethel. God of Bethel, or God of the house of God, because it was there that God revealed himself to him that he was fleeing from his brother. Now Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died, was buried under the oak trees below Bethel, so it was named Alon Bachuth. After Jacob returned to Padan Aram, God appeared to him again and blessed him. God said to him, "Your name is Jacob, but you will no longer be called Jacob, your name will be Israel." So he named him Israel. Now, we've already had one story of how that happened. You notice here how we have kind of broad history stories and personal stories. We have a personal story of why he is called Israel, and then we have this broader narrative history of why he is called Israel. God said to him, "I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and increase in number. A nation and a community of nations will come from you. Kings will come from your body. The land I gave to Abraham and Isaac I also give to you, and I will give this land to your descendants after you." God went up from him at that place where he had talked to him. Jacob set up a stone pillar at the place where God had talked to him. He poured out a drink offering on it. He also poured out oil on it. Jacob called the place where God had talked to him Bethel, which we already knew. Then they moved on from Bethel, while they were still some different distance from Ephrath. Rachel began to give birth in great difficulty. And as she was having great difficulty in childbirth, the midwife said to her, "Don't be afraid, for you have another son." She breathed her last, for she was dying. She named her son Ben-Oni, and his father named him Benjamin. Ben-Oni is son of my trouble. Benjamin is son of my right hand. So Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. Over her tomb Jacob set a pillar, and to this day the pillar marks Rachel's tomb. Israel moved on again and pitched his tent beyond Migdal Eder. While Israel was living in that region, Reuben went in and slept with his father's concubine, Bilhah, and Israel heard of it. Okay, so that's important, or it will be later, that Reuben, firstborn of Jacob, goes in and sleeps with Bilhah, the concubine. Jacob had 12 sons, the sons of Leah: Reuben, the firstborn of Jacob; Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. The sons of Rachel: Joseph and Benjamin. Sons of Rachel's maidservants: Bilhah, Dan, and Naphtali. The sons of Leah's maidservant: Zilpah, Gad, and Asher. These were the sons of Jacob, who had borne to him in Padan Aram. Jacob came home to his father Isaac in Mamre, near Kirjath Araba, that is, Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac had stayed. Isaac lived 180 years. He breathed his last and died, and was gathered to his people, old and full of years, and his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. So, while we have been focusing on Jacob, technically this was the account of Isaac and ends with Isaac's death. What follows is the account of Esau, and just goes through all of his children and who they were kings of, until we come to chapter 37. And this is the account of Jacob, although it does not focus on Jacob, it focuses on Joseph. In many ways, it's probably best to stop the video here and to pick up another one with the story of Joseph. I want to just make another comment about the different narratives. And it's not something we have brought up before, but perhaps this is a good time for it. Traditional origin of the Pentateuch, the first 5 books, is that they are the books of Moses, that Moses wrote them. There is a great deal, just from simple reading, even just the simple reading that we've been doing, to suggest that that's not the case, that there are multiple authors who had multiple intentions. One of the ways people have distinguished these is by what name of God is used: Elohim or Yahweh. Coupled with that is, what is the nature of God? Is he distant? Is he unrelatable? Or is he personal? Reflected in Elohim, the sovereign name of God, the word God, or Yahweh, a personal name. There are also multiple stories that explain the same thing. We saw today just the difference between how did Israel get his name. We had a very personal story, and then we had a historical kind of narrative story. The idea is that at some point, probably after the fall of the Northern Kingdom, potentially, the priest felt it necessary to gather up all the different stories about their past and work to compile them. And rather than completely rejecting a story just because it was a little bit different, they instead try to reconcile them into one narrative, which is why we have 3 different accounts of a patriarch telling a ruler his wife is actually his sister. To me, this is not a problem in terms of my faith. I don't care. None of these books say they were written by Moses. And in fact, at one point, we get the phrase, "And Moses was the most humble of all the people." And as my mother said, when you call yourself humble, you're not. So either Moses wasn't the most humble people, or somebody else wrote that. That's okay. To me, God guides and shapes things over time. A book compiled over years by multiple hands is no less the product of God's inspiration than a book that someone copied out from an angel breathing in their ear. It's not a matter of faith for me. You may believe what you wish. I choose a more academic, scholarly approach to these books. I am looking for lessons about morality, about how we should live and should not live, than I am historicity. For there's a difference between fact and truth. Fact is verifiable. It is measurable. It is reproducible. Truth is more subtle. It may not be measured. It might not be verifiable, but it's real. The example I always give of that is love. Facts are how a person behaves, demonstrations of that behavior, records of it. But love is completely different. Love is something you experience and know or don't know. Love cannot be proven. Only examples of behavior that we might think suggest love, but don't necessarily. When we get into the story of Joseph, we get into one of my favorite accounts in the entire Bible. And we see Joseph growing up through the story. Go ahead, read through Joseph. That will bring us up to the end of Genesis. Not entirely sure where we'll go after that, but we'll have at least another week, if not more. Until then, struggle with the text. Examine what you believe and what you may not believe. Grow because of it.